Welcome to another powerful conversation in the Hidden to Heard series, where we honor the untold stories and the beautifully real stories of women who lead from the heart. Today, I am truly excited to welcome Maya Feller. Maya's work is rooted in cultural heritage and the food that we eat, and her leadership speaks directly to my soul, as I believe it will speak directly to yours. Welcome, Maya.
Thank you so much for having me, Abby. I am thrilled to be in conversation with you.
And I am so happy that you're here. And so I'm just going to share a little bit more information about you with our audience. So Maya Feller, MSRD, CDN, founder of Brooklyn-based Maya Feller Nutrition, is a registered dietitian nutritionist, author of Eating from Our Roots, 80 plus healthy home cooked favorites. And yes, so I've just got to say, I actually made one of Maya's beautifully, very, very simple recipes. So thank you for that. Right, let me get back to it. Thanks for sharing it. Yeah, so 80 plus healthy home cooked favorites from cultures around the world. This was also spoken about in Goop Press, January 24, 2023, and host of YouTube where Wellbeing Meets Flavor. So, I'm excited to get into this, Maya. Okay, so let's just dive into the first question. And the first question has to be around heritage and culturally relevant foods. And so, why do you think that it's important that heritage and culturally relevant foods are always included as part of one's eating pattern?
So I love that question. Many times we actually think of the act of eating separate from pleasure. And the truth is that the foods that we enjoy, the foods that remind us of home, are so much really intertwined with our identity and our heritage. They can be nourishing, they can be healing on like physical, but also emotional, spiritual levels. And so I think that when we make sure that our full selves show up on our plates, that we actually have better health outcomes. And I've seen it even with the patients that I work with. So many of my patients will believe that they have to engage in Anglo-American or Anglo-European style eating patterns in order to
Yeah,
be healthy.
yeah,
However, Afro-Caribbean, African traditional heritage diets are rooted in plants. They're rooted in herbs and spices that are filled with phytonutrients and antioxidants that quite literally give our cells information on how to function optimally. And so we want those things on our plate from a health perspective, but then also from a taste of home. There's nothing better than me sitting down to
hmm,
roti or something that my grandmother made when she was
yeah,
living. It literally nourished me. And Abby, there's even research around
uh-huh,
people eating in community and that they actually have better health outcomes when they eat in their communities and they break
yeah,
bread with people. So I always want our heritage foods to show up on our plates.
yeah. I love that. Thank you. And I guess the next question is I'm really interested to find out. Um, First of all, what was it that inspired you to write your book, Eating from Our Roots? Yeah, tell me that first. And I've got another next question.
So it's interesting. I was actually approached. I had been part of In Goop Health, which is
Mhm.
a summit from Goop. And this was during the pandemic. And I spoke, as I always do, about the importance of culturally relevant foods as a part of everyday eating and health for all people.
Yeah.
And after giving that talk, someone from Goop reached out and said, we'd be interested if you would give us a proposal. And they choose 3 books per year. And so I had this incredible proposal. And of course,
Mm,
Abby, because if I'm talking about eating from our roots, I
yeah.
like prepared to travel the globe. I was going to go into the kitchens of the aunties and the uncles and the grandmas and the grandpas. but it was COVID, and so I actually couldn't.
Okay.
So what I did was I said, what's the best way for me to move around the globe and in and out of various diasporas from the global majority,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And also keep those foods in their rightfully respectful place. How do I do this? So I worked with a dear chef friend of mine, Sylvia Barbon, woman from
Mm,
Italy, who helped me reach out to 7 other chefs. And I interviewed chefs and met people. It was a whole process. So,
yeah.
for example, the Filipino section was heavily influenced by a dear chef friend of mine, Chef Joel Javier. So then
Beautiful.
you get these flavors. And that is how I was able to travel the globe with actually out leaving my kitchen in
Yeah.
COVID. Hmm.
Yeah. I love that. Thank you. And And I think what is really interesting about what you're talking, well, there's two things. One, you were able to travel across the world from the comfort of your own home
Yeah.
and create this beautiful, um, rich tapestry of influences that we would say are very, very
Yeah.
cultural. And I think that that's a really beautiful thing. And also for anybody really that has read your book, these recipes are for everybody, I'm guessing.
Oh, yes, they're absolutely for everyone. And this is what I say. So, part of what happens in wellness culture is that there's this idea that there's a one size that fits all.
Mm,
So, I recently, for example, was traveling and I was in a place where I had not previously seen smoothies and like vitamin shots, like those little small things. But
yes,
now
yes,
wellness culture says that's what you need. Well, here's the thing
yeah.
that I find funny about that. If you look at people from Latin America and the Caribbean, they've been drinking smoothies and fruit juices and
Yeah,
vitamin shots forever.
absolutely.
And so, what I want to show people is that if you move around the globe and you allow yourself to taste different flavors without changing them, you might actually give your body more variety and more nutrients than just sitting down and having brown rice and steamed chicken. It'll
Yeah.
also taste better.
Yeah, yeah, okay. Thank you. That's a great share. And what I love about already is that we're listening to you and we're learning as we go. So we're attributing knowledge to all of the research and the people that you've spoken to across your journey. Um, and I think that that kind of segues me into the next question, which is about, I guess, the relationship that individuals and people have to food, because in your words, there's a hierarchy. Uh,
Mhm.
and so I'm really interested because I'd never really thought of it in that way. So I'm really interested to find out more about the relationship to food and the hierarchy and how that plays out in terms of our cultural backgrounds, where we are in the world. And yeah, if you'd like to talk a bit more into that, I'm really curious to find out more.
Yeah, so what I found for sure in the US, and I've done a good bit of traveling, but there's this idea, and I hear it with my patients, that food can't be pleasure, and that actually
Mm,
eating is around restricting. So it's more like, I can't have this, or I shouldn't have that because
yeah.
it's not good for me. And then, so that's one part of it, right? That it's
Hmm.
punitive, like don't enjoy your meal. Number
Yeah.
two, everyone should have a thin body. That's the other part of this conversation.
Yes.
So it's a thin, able-bodied kind of person with an Anglo-European physique. Now,
Yeah.
that means that everybody else, the global majority, now has to aspire to what's at the top of that hierarchy. So it's restriction and then also trying to meld your body into whatever the hierarchy says is at the top. So
Yeah.
that means that people of color from all over the globe,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
all of these foods, so like the many of the foods that we see in our my cookbook,
Yeah.
not at the top of that hierarchy. And I often use the example of the Mediterranean diet.
Yes.
Mm, Research says the Mediterranean diet is such a great diet, and I'm not refuting this. It is fantastic.
Hmm.
However, they're definitely only thinking about one part of the Mediterranean. They're not talking about the Middle East. We don't hear that coming up. We don't hear North Africa coming up as a part of that conversation. They're
Yeah.
talking about Italy and France, right? And they're talking about those types of foods that people think.
Hmm.
However, here's the thing that's so interesting. If you go into Northern Africa and if you eat around the Middle East, you'll actually see all of these flavors and spices that are
Yeah.
incredibly nourishing, but
Yeah.
deeply rooted in heritage. It doesn't negate what's happening in Italy or France, but it's just
Yeah.
not part of the conversation. And there's a recent study that came out looking at African heritage diets, and they actually
Yeah.
found that people who followed traditional African heritage eating patterns actually had outcomes similar to what they think of as traditional Mediterranean eating patterns. And so
Interesting.
this
Hmm.
now goes back to, well, who's at the top of the hierarchy? Right? And this is
Yeah.
when we begin to see that we have to actually unlearn the idea that Anglo-American, Anglo-European foodways are the benchmark. They can be a part of the conversation, but don't have to
Yes.
be the center. And so as we're thinking about the hierarchy, this is where I say to folks, I want you to go back and think of your heritage foods, every single person. And I've had
Yeah.
people from all over the world. Oh my goodness, I remember when my grandmother would be grating potatoes and beets. Oh,
Yeah.
I remember what all over from Eastern Europe to the Caribbean
Yeah.
bring these stories, but that's not what we think of when we think of
Mm.
wellness. So I encourage all the listeners to really say, what are the things that are grounded in my family traditions that
Yes.
actually serve my body? And
Yeah.
how can I get those things, if I enjoy them, into my routine?
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. Thank you. And and I guess my next question would be, for the majority, what you've just shared with us, well, I'm saying for the majority, depending on where you are in the world, because there's some places where we might move to in the world, and then we don't really see foods that are inherent within us that we're used to. So could you speak into a little bit of like if so for instance, if I'd moved and I'd moved to where's the country? I'd moved to Belgium, for instance. Like, and I'm like, oh, this looks lovely, but it's not what I'm used to. How would I then ensure as much as possible that I was still getting a healthy, balanced diet into my body?
I love that question. And I'm going to answer it with an example that I happened upon 2 days ago, a restaurant that was a combination of Peruvian and Japanese food. Because in
Mm.
Peru, there were indentured Japanese workers, laborers that came over. And so
Okay.
they actually ended up kind of putting their cuisines together to really get that heritage and taste of home. And I thought, well, this is
Wow.
fantastic. So
Yeah.
you're in Belgium, and then you're taking the food there and then adding your flavors on top of it so that you create something that is not either exactly your heritage food and it's not exactly what we think of as traditional food from Belgium, but it's a melding of the two. And there's
Yeah.
probably different flavors and a little bit of different spices and different herbs and maybe the cooking technique is slightly altered, but it's bringing together what you have access to wherever you are with hints or flavors, tastes of home.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that for two reasons because Belgium is very much a multicultural country, but there are parts of Belgium, as there are even here in the UK, that are really rural.
Yes,
So you're only going to get those really rural foods. And I also think there are many times when those really rural foods are so fresh
yes,
that you can go to the farms, you can go to all the really natural places that generally take their food and import it into the town centres and townships anyway. So you can get that beautiful blend of all of the fresh things, but bring in your own blend. So you kind of, yeah, you're creating something new.
Yeah, and here's the thing that I love, what I found with when I'm working with individuals one-on-one through
Yeah.
the practice or when the dietitians are, is that when people are allowed to get pleasure from eating,
Yes.
all of a sudden food begins to taste really good. And
Yeah.
if you center something that tastes good and also serves your body, it's
Hmm.
extraordinary what happens.
Yeah. And I love what I'm hearing throughout all of the themes of the questions is for you with your patients and what you do. It is about allowing food to taste good
That's
and
right.
pleasurable.
Yes. I mean, we in theory, for those of us who eat by mouth, we eat anywhere from 1 to 5 times per day.
Yeah. Yeah.
Imagine we it should actually be something that we look forward to because we're going to go back to do it in a few hours again.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think this kind of goes looping back to the first part of our discussion where, there are thoughts, there are, I guess, programmed thoughts about food in our minds about how much we should eat and what we should eat, and if we eat that we're going to look that way, and the subconscious, the subliminal messages are we should look thin, and so there's all of these messages that sometimes I think, even when I think about my eating experiences, sometimes almost overcloud
Yes.
the beauty and the taste of the food because your mind's somewhere else.
Yes, I agree. So there it's fascinating. Oftentimes people say there's someone who has an eating disorder and they're over there. That's not me. To your point, Abby, because it's actually woven into the fabric of
Yeah.
so many societies,
Yes.
everybody is coming up against these questions around, is this good?
Yes.
Should I be eating this? And some of us are able to move through it with complete ease and say, you know what, I want to have it. And
Yeah.
some of us, there's a struggle. And so I have to acknowledge that the same way that we all see other people,
Yeah.
see bodies, and we attach feelings and emotions to bodies because subjectively, right, from an
Yeah.
implicit place, just as you said, we've learned this, it's woven into structures and systems around
Yeah.
what is a quote unquote good body. And then we
Yeah.
all aspire to have that. And then the way to get there is to manipulate what we're putting into our mouths.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you for that. And it feels to me, Maya, that whilst you are a dietitian and you've been a dietitian for many years, what you're actually sharing with your clients is much more than the narrow, well, it can be kind of a narrow script of a dietitian. It sounds like what you're sharing is much more holistic.
Absolutely, because food doesn't exist in a vacuum.
Mm,
So we actually we interact with people and flavors and cultures and we move through different cultural groups and all of that actually informs how we think about ourselves in society, how we think about our food in society. And Abby, I've even had patients just the other day, I overheard
uh-huh.
a conversation of people saying, these are foods that I would never bring to my office. Kimchi, curry. And I turned around because I was actually in conversation with the people and said,
Yeah,
why would you never bring those foods to your office? Well, because they smell.
smell. Yeah.
So there you go. Now
Mm,
you stepped into, well, that's smelly food. So I don't want to have that in a public place. Right?
yeah.
And so there's all of this kind of implicit, there goes the hierarchy again. It's
Yes. Yes.
therefore you don't eat it, it's offensive to other people.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I really think that as we're looking at nutrition, for me as a clinician, I have to know that this is what people are coming with. That's the baggage.
Yes.
if the culture is kimchi and it's reminiscent of their grandma, and then their kid is like, I don't want you to pack that for school, that's embarrassing.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That becomes a situation where we have to have a conversation. And so it is holistic. It is
Mm,
all parts of us so that we can really nourish our bodies.
yeah, yeah. I love that. Thank you. And for my last question, I want to ask you, Maya, was there ever a time in your life where you felt hidden? This series is about hidden to herd. Um, and if you did, what changed for you so that you now feel heard, particularly in the work that you do currently?
Yeah. So I remember very, very early on in my dietetics career going to an event where I was a speaker, and I
Yeah,
got to the event. And if you're the speaker, you get there early. And the person, one of the organizers, looked at me and said, "Oh, sorry, the doors don't open until," and I said, "But I'm your speaker." And it was
yes.
then that I realized that
Okay.
I was like, "Oh, I don't know what they expected because they requested my presence."
Yes.
Um, but it was then that I realized that even with my degree and my credentials
Yeah.
as a woman of color, I walk
Mm,
into spaces and people don't expect that
yeah.
I'm the speaker, right? I
Yeah.
could be a guest or whatever, but I couldn't be the person sharing the knowledge.
Yeah.
And that, I have to say, continues to happen.
Mm,
And I have a team around me that's incredibly supportive, and
yes.
like, and I do have people who are advocating for me, like, and without them there's no way that I would be where I am in terms of speaking and public appearances, and so I am forever grateful. But it takes
Yeah.
an advocate. It takes someone to actually say, you know what, I believe in her, because
Yeah.
I recognize that it's not the norm to see a regular sized woman of color with natural hair
With natural hair.
as your dietitian saying, I give you permission to eat. It's like I'm the
Yeah.
antithesis of what people think about when they walk into wellness spaces. And so I'm grateful to all the people who continue to open doors and make space for me at the table, like you,
Yeah.
to have these conversations, because it is a unlearning that we have to do as a society. And I think we're moving forward, right?
Absolutely.
But I still sometimes absolutely feel hidden.
Yeah. Beautiful. Uh, and what I really love about this is, you're honest, your raw answer is this continues.
Yeah,
It's not just a one and done. There are still spaces that you enter and that may come up. And I just think the way that you're open to it, and obviously you've got your support team, your champions, and all of that, but it doesn't take away from this is still going on.
yeah,
And so I think there is still work that we are always doing. You're a pioneer in your field and what you've done in public speaking, media, all those things. And what I love about this is that we're bringing pioneers to the forefront, sharing their messages, sharing their work so that other people can hear all of the incredible things that you're doing in the world. And that was my last question. This has been amazing. But before we sign off, or before I ask you to share your details, you have offered our amazing audience a gift, and I'm really pleased. So the gift is a copy of Maya's best-selling book, Eating from Our Roots. And it's not just that, she's also offering you one complimentary nutrition session, and I think this is absolutely incredible. This is high value. Everyone that's listening now, you've only really been listening to Maya for the last half an hour, but you're going to get incredible value out of this conversation. So the only thing that you would need to do is drop your email address, because obviously it would have to be sent out, and we'll put all of the information in the show notes. So Maya, if people want to connect with you, where can they find out more about you and where to connect?
So folks can head over to my website, mayafellernutrition.com, and that'll be in the show notes as well. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm on Instagram and TikTok at Maya Feller RD, and YouTube, also Maya Feller RD. So I'd say those are the three places where you can find me. Definitely head to the website and sign up for the newsletter. We put out great information every week, and I can't wait to connect with your listeners.
Beautiful. Maya, I knew it was going to be incredible. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for sharing your truth. Thank you for coming on and just sharing some beautiful nuggets that we can all use, that we can all take on board and think, oh, actually, got a point there. Didn't think about that. And that is what this is about. So have a beautiful rest of your day. And thank you so much again.
Thank you so much for having me, and I am sending a huge virtual hug.